The week there's been so much in the papers column about, you know, the Down Kerry, the great battles of the past and Down's record, but as one scribe said today in the papers, Down are now barking with the big dogs.
Absolutely, and I'd say it grates a bit with Kerry. I'm sure Pat would comment better on it, but I'm sure it grates the fact that Down sort of all this idea that, you know, we're always able to beat Kerry. They haven't come across Kerry too often, I suppose that's the reason. But I was at a golf out and I remember it must be after Down won in '91, and they had 4 All-Irelands, and somebody from that team, who shall remain nameless, got up and said, you know, we thought it would be nice today. We brought a member from each All-Ireland winning team, and we thought, and you know, everybody gave a nice clap. And Micheál Murray got up and said, well, we were thinking of doing the same with Kerry, but there wasn't enough time on the timesheet to let the teams out. You know, so even at that point, you know.
And the Down men remind you of it too, you know, wherever you go, like they remind you of it.
You know, Down have to come and prove themselves today. Kerry have been proving themselves here for the last 10 years. Even without some of their best players, there's still a very formidable look to the Kerry team.
No Tomás O'Shea and Paul Galvin today, Pat, and given the absentees, was say from the beginning of the year that were flagged to us, that has to have an impact. I was kind of surprised in some of the newspapers today that there still seems to be issues in Kerry about, you know, injustice and all that kind of stuff.
You told me about the article. I didn't see it. To be quite honest, I think that's wrong to be talking, you know, blaming this and blaming that. If you want to, when you've won the All-Ireland at the end of the year and you've the cup in your hands, you can give out whatever like that. But it's better to do like the Mick O'Dwyer and be cute and tell the media what they want to say. But I mean, one record is going to be broken today, whether it is, I mean, Kerry have never been beaten in a quarter-final. Down have never been beaten by Kerry in the championship. So it's without Galvin and Tomás O'Shea, this is where Kerry are at their most vulnerable.
Yeah, okay. All right, it's time for us to take a break here on the programme. When we come back, more in our build-up to the first of this weekend's All-Ireland.
Jack, you've come the direct route this year. It's been a few weeks since the Munster final. How have things been in the Kerry camp?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, we've trained well, trained hard, and just looking forward to the game now. But I mean, it remains to be seen whether the month's delay now will affect us, especially early on in the game. So, you know, we'll be determined to get a fast start and get to the pace of the game early.
But happy to be back in Croke Park. Kerry loves to perform here. Yeah,
we like the pitch. We like the whole atmosphere and the surroundings here. And you know, more often than not, the lads have performed here. But today is another day, a good test of us now with a young, new, vibrant Down team coming down. You know, who won't fear us and have a good record in Croke Park. So, you know, it's all to play for, and we're looking forward to it.
You've made a few changes to your team since the last time you were here. Aidan O'Mahony back for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, Aidan started in instead of Tomás, and obviously we're missing Paul Galvin as well, who was a big loss for us. So, I mean, you're talking about one, the current player of the year, the other, a former player of the year. So, I mean, they're huge losses. But, I mean, that's what panels are for, and you know, just hope now we have enough to cope today.
James, a huge challenge for you here today against Kerry, but you must be happy with your progress to the qualifiers.
Well, yeah, we're happy to be here, but obviously Kerry are going to provide a big test for us today, but it's one we're looking forward to.
Now, there are a lot of people talking about the history between these two teams. Down have never been beaten by Kerry. Will that count for much today?
No, unfortunately not. It'd be nice to make our own wee bit of history if we can, but no, the history of anything is going to be a motivating factor for Kerry, and I'm sure Jack will use that.
Yeah, that's the views of the managers on a day that's gone quite poor, I have to say, weather-wise here. Some very, very heavy drizzle at Croke Park. Now let's get some other views on this first game today. Claire McNamara is down pitchside with the great Mick O'Dwyer of Kerry.
Yes, indeed, Michael, and the rain just coming down on us here. Miko, yeah, you have memories here of Kerry versus Down. Of course, everybody talking about the 1968 final. Not such happy memories for you in that one.
Certainly not, but the 1961, of course, when it all started for Down. We played them in 1960 in the All-Ireland final. We played them in the All-Ireland semi-final in 1961 and again in 1968, and they were the better team on the 3 occasions. That was a period we just couldn't get the better of Down. And when I had that really good team in Kerry, it was amazing. Down never came out of Ulster at that period, and they were the one team I always wanted to play. The only chance I ever got was down in Auckland last year when I met them down there in the championship, and I managed to get a point victory over them. So that was good for a change, because up to that they had been hammering Kerry, and anything involved with Kerry, I think they were delighted to win those games.
Okay, well that's the past. What about the present? How do you think it will go today?
Well, I think that's a reasonably good Down team. Their defence, I think, is not great, but they have two very good midfielders. They have a wonderful full forward line. So if they can get the ball in quick and fast into the forward line, I think they'll have a chance. But still, I think Kerry have the all-round power and strength. I think even though Kerry have what they're missing, about 7 or 8 players of the team that won the All-Ireland last year. But you know, we still keep producing them down in Kerry, and we're producing really good ones. So we're just hoping that it will go well today. But I'm hoping they will have a good game of football.
So a first win for Kerry over Down today.
Well, that would be good if it happened.
Okay, well, we will wait and see. Michael Dwyer, thanks for talking to us. Let's go back up to Michael.
Well, it would be good for Kerry if it happened, obviously. Anyway, now, Tyrone's Sean Kavanagh was saying during the week that Pat Spillane here is unlikely to get his wish in seeing open, attractive football in either of these games today. About the styles of football that he was talking about, you, Colm, have been looking at Kerry and particularly the way they defend.
Well, certain Kerry have adapted their game from sort of all-out flair and attacking to one where they play a very defensive style when the opposition have the ball. And you can see against Cork in last year's All-Ireland final, look at the number of Kerry players just inside the 45-metre line. So they forced Cork to shoot from long range. And again, everybody funneling back straight away. So by the time the ball is kicked in, there's 5 Kerry players there and another 3 coming in. So that's 8 players inside their 20-metre line. And then they break out quickly out of defence. Thomas Sullivan, though, hasn't had a good year this year and has looked very suspect, but, you know, comes up the field and able to kick a point.
The point is, I think that, you know, a measure of a team always is to look at their cornerbacks. You know, who can you afford to play at cornerback? And they've got Mark O'Shea and Tom O'Sullivan, you know, 2 of the best footballers that we've seen in the modern era. And, you know, that know-how that they have, the ability to score. In fact, they're all 2-footed, you know, their football and pedigree. And also, I think, something that is often underrated, you know, their cynicism in the sense of their ruthlessness and their ability to know how to close out a game. You know, we've seen them against lesser teams in Croke Park here, toying with them.
Pat, you have been studying the Down team, and in actual fact, you've sort of identified, if you like, the good and the bad of Down.
Well, Down's thus far in the championship have been quite inconsistent. You know, they stumbled over Donegal, but you know, in the match against Tyrone, we saw the good and the bad. I mean, for the first 20 minutes against Tyrone, they were superb. They were very positive in their play. They were composed. They moved the ball quickly, and they got some great scores. And after 20 minutes, they were 8-4 up. Now, after that, they scored 2 points in the remaining 53 minutes. And you can see why. They sat back and look at the time and space that they afforded to the Tyrone players. Now, this is fairly naive defending, but like the one thing you have to do with Tyrone is you have to play them man-to-man. You have to put them under pressure. And they didn't do that. I mean, they played with the wind in the second half, and they allowed Tyrone dictate to play, where Tyrone always had an extra man up in support, and when Tyrone get that extra man up in support, they'll be destroyed. So I mean, if you want to beat, I mean, they talk about a system with Tyrone. There isn't a system. It's ferocious work rate. When you haven't got the ball, you're all walking back in defence. When you have the ball, you're all walking forward in attack. And to counteract that, you've got to mark them man to man, and Down there did not.
Both teams out on the pitch here at Croke Park, and as I said, just to remind you once again, the weather is quite poor here at the moment. Nice morning in Dublin, but it's gone very drizzly over the last while, and I suspect conditions are going to be a bit slippery underfoot. Let's just have a quick look at the Down team, gentlemen, and we might...
Even though Down played with a sweeper against Donegal, you saw the pandemonium when the ball was kicked pretty aimlessly towards Michael Murphy. And with Kerry, you know, there's much more precision. I mean, the ball's fired in beautifully on top of Donaghy at the angle. And, you know, they can take a game away from you so quickly, as we saw in the a couple of Ireland finals against Mayo, particularly the one where he was marking David Heaney. So it's a big ordeal for Gordon. He's not a natural fullback. He's been there now for all of 3 weeks.
He was an attacker, wasn't he, first of all?
Yeah, he's been there for all of 3 weeks, so it's a huge ordeal.
Yeah, the only thing is with Kieran Donaghy this year, he hasn't been playing that well. I mean, in the 4 matches to date, he scored a point against Tipperary, scoreless against Cork, a goal and a point against Cork in the replay, and he got no score against Limerick.
He sets up a lot, Pat.
I find that he's getting a bit impetuous this year, and his work rate and movement isn't as good as it should be, and when things aren't going well, that he just gets frustrated. But it's not aided, it's aided a bit by the fact that Kerry are obsessed. Kerry overdo the hand-passing game. Against Limerick, Kerry passed the ball 185 times. 135 of those were hand passes, and they have the 2 best full forwards in the game in the Gooch and Donny, but I believe that Kerry aren't getting the ball in quick and long into them, which they should be.
They should be doing that today.
The big thing too about tall players are not suited by Croke Park when it's wet, because the ground gets very slippy, and the taller players oftentimes are less balanced obviously than the smaller, with not as low a centre of gravity, so they have difficulty often holding their feet, and Donaghy has that problem.
Well, for sure it's going to be slippy for this first match and presumably for the second one as well. Kerry, because of the absence of Tomás O'Shea, have had to reshuffle the defence a little bit. Aidan O'Mahony at wing back in this selection.
Yeah, well, Aidan O'Mahony, 3 or 4 years ago, looked one of the great Kerry backs and then has gone through a turbulent time over the last few years. He's back now, but he's replacing probably the best wing back of the last decade, probably the best player of the last decade, and maybe the best wing back that I have seen in Croke Park. So it's going to be a fair test for him.
That won't be a costly move, because O'Mahony is playing great club football. He's playing brilliant in training, and I think we won't lose too much in that. The only problem with O'Mahony is in the last 12 months that he has a tendency to foul and get in. His discipline is a problem at times.
He's better in the wing than he is at centre half. As a centre half, you could have driven a bus past, but he's more suited to wing back.
Like
he's a very formidable replacement. I mean, compare them to the down defenders. I mean, Conor Garvey, Damien Rafferty, Declan Rooney.
It's a bit like the Kenny hurlers, isn't it? You have all stars to bring on, and you have a problem.
He wanted to be too physical over the last few years instead of just playing the game. But the big problem from Kerry, and it was outlined there, is it's definitely an ageing backline. Thomas Sullivan and Tommy Griffin haven't been as good as they have in previous times, even though obviously Kerry come alight in Croke Park, but they have been sluggish in most quarter-finals. With a long break from Munster final, it's going to be difficult to see how they react. But yet, if you compare the three best sound forwards, Coulter, Hughes and Clark, and you compare them with Donaghy, Gooch and Declan O'Sullivan, you say Kerry have a big advantage.
Michael, the biggest loss is Paul Gallivan, because Kerry have a poor midfield, a struggling midfield. We're losing the battle of midfield in every game this year. And where Gallivan's big role was, he's great for the dirty ball, the breaking ball. He's great as the link player between defence and attack. And with Gallivan missing, particularly against Limerick, Limerick ruled the roost in that middle third.
And also, Pat, the two down midfielders are gallopers.
Yes.
Flying machines. I mean, Callum King's one of those martial arts.
Going well now at the moment.
Flying machines. The big problem, of course, for Down is the mental side of things. They need to stop up the game very quickly. Kerry can go away from you so quickly, and there's a certain electricity that courses through them when they come to Croke Park. And what you don't want is a situation where after 15 minutes it's 1-5 to a point. Down must not do that, because their heads tend to go down, as you saw against Tyrone.
Presumably, Pat, they must try and keep the Gooch away from the ball as well.
Look, I say pound for pound that this guy is one of the most skillful forwards that has ever played Gaelic football. I think he's a magician on the ball. He's absolutely brilliant, because he's virtually unmarkable, because he has left, he has right, he has balance, he's a great team player, he's composed. This guy is magic.
And he's good in the air.
And he's good in the air. He has everything.
He's not small.
He's about 6'1".
You
can have your Messis and your Ronaldinhos, whatever like that. This is a